Next on the Shmee Show, we have our special guest. She's a friend, she's a mom, and honestly, I think she's an icon. Take a look. Lifetime dancer and choreographer Tootsie Olan lives a high-voltage life. As the owner and star of her cardio dance and yoga studio, Tootsie is charging up everyone all over New Jersey, New York City, and the world. Whether it's getting us moving with her signature class, Dance Floored, or inspiring us with an interview from her podcast, The Lighthouse Conversations, Tootsie finds a way to radiate light. Her work has been highlighted by NBC, CBS, The Wall Street Journal, and so many more. When asked to explain her brand, she says it best. Tootsie Olan is a New York City-born brand, birthed from an obsessive determination to share the things we believe make life deeply meaningful. Welcome to the Shmee Show, Tootsie Olan!
Holla! That is a very lofty introduction. Makes me really want to get to know whoever the hell this person is.
But it's so well deserved.
Oh,
That's who you are.
Oh.
So we got to talk right away because people are going to ask, Sam, how do you guys know each other? Because, so do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, let's do it. I know how I think we know each other. So how do you think we know each other?
So for those who don't know, I used to manage a coffee shop in Fairhaven, New Jersey. And I was there for 4 years. And you were one of the very first people that I met while working there. Yeah. Because I think when did you guys move to Fairhaven?
We moved in 2012.
Okay, yeah.
Right around that time. So I think what happened probably is not only, we were so excited. We moved from like an urban environment, the New York City area. And I say that because we actually were in New York City, we were in Chelsea for a very long time. And then we did like a pit stop in Hoboken, feeling like that was going to be like our city. Like we were so close. We were right in the water. So we could still like we still lived in the city, but needed more space for kids.
Wait, hold on. You lived in Hoboken?
For like a hot minute, more like.
How did I never know that?
I don't know. You know it now. So we lived uptown.
Live from Hoboken.
Yeah, right. We lived uptown. Literally, we used to live on 23rd Street in Chelsea. And I say that if you stood on the rooftop of our Chelsea apartment and you had a really good arm and you like tossed a baseball, I don't even know what a baseball looks like, but if you tossed one of them right across the Hudson River, it would have landed at the doorstep of our apartment, like our townhouse that we were in Hoboken. Like, right, you know what I'm saying? Like uptown.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. That's so funny. So continue.
So we moved here and it was a little bit of a culture shock. And we were so excited to have and I'm from the suburbs, but we'll get to that. But it was still, we didn't realize how not suburban we were feeling in that time of our lives. And so we were so excited to have like our coffee shop and like those places that we could walk to. And that's part of the reason why I moved here. But also, we moved to a really homogeneous area and and anytime there was somebody who had a little bit of color, flavor, gay in the arts, I was like, home, like please. So that's probably why we gravitated to each other.
I mean, literally, the first memory of you that I have is like the whirlwind that you are. You come flying in those coffee shop doors, and one of the first things you ask me is, "What kind of teas do you guys have here?" And I was like,
So diva, teas.
So diva. And you're like, do you have peppermint? Do you have turmeric? No, but there was one time that I'll never forget. It was like years down the road. Like we had already known each other, and it's one of the memories that just sticks out in my mind. And I don't know why. It's funny, but again, had to deal with the tea. And you must have been on some turmeric kick where everything in your life was turmeric chicken, turmeric kombucha.
Yeah.
And you were insistent, Sam, I need turmeric tea at the coffee shop. And to this day, Tootsie, whenever I use turmeric, which is more often than not, I literally think of you.
I was on a turmeric kick. That was actually after I got, I did a lot of retreats, or I did retreats in a row when I was like out of the country and I came back and my system was like, sister, like, can we curse on here? Because I really like to curse.
Oh, hell yes.
Okay. So people always ask that on my podcast, and I always say,
I know.
Please bring it.
Which we'll get there.
But yeah. And I needed, my system was like, you need to like chill the fuck out, like come down. And I found out that turmeric helps. And I like natural remedies. I'm not really into non-natural stuff.
Same.
Yeah.
So for someone who doesn't know, in your own words, Who is Tootsie Olan?
So just so we're clear, some of these questions came before so I could prepare. And this one I almost had to laugh at because are there going to be people who are going to respond like, well, Tootsie Olan is a really fascinating human being. She's the essence of, I'm like every other person. I mean, I think
Well, okay,
that,
sorry. Let me reiterate. If someone you met someone and they said, who are you? What do you do? What, like, I guess in a bar setting,
Yeah.
I guess put it that way.
So I got it. So like the less lofty version.
Yeah.
I am a choreographer and a yogi and a kind of daring pioneer, I think, in the fitness industry. I'm a mom and a decent wife. I really am, and I'm a sister and a daughter and all of those things. But professionally, I am a retreat leader and and now I'm like a podcast person.
Guru.
But I think a guru, I would never. If I met somebody in a bar and they were like, "Who are you?" Shoot me if I ever say I'm a guru. And by the way, if anybody ever says that they're a guru, they should be, Anyway, yeah, a little bit. But really, I think for good and ill, I have always been a dancer and somebody who likes to dig in deep to life and pull out what I can and make platforms out of that.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That's how I see you.
It's not a great answer.
No,
I will never have
Tootsie,
I don't think I'll ever
is.
have an elevator pitch for that one. But we could dive in. They're all messy.
Well, it's honestly, I feel like if someone did off the cusp have an elevator pitch, that's a little concerning.
Especially
Like,
about themselves, like
often-
a self-definition of like, oh,
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Like for me, I'm sure you've experienced this. When it came to when people ever asked me to write my playbill bio, I was like, I don't know. I am awful about writing about myself.
Well, I think also part of it is that you have, one hopes that we're really, really messy, multidimensional. That when you have to do that, like, this is who I am. Like, and I think you should be like shapeshifters, not without authenticity, but I hope that I could answer this question a year from now and it change a little bit. There's certain parts of me and what I do will always probably be and this is, I think, where we'll dive in, like whether I like it or not will be a part of who I am because it's so deeply a part of who I am. But I hope to keep on growing and shifting and having like different labels for who and what I show up to be. That's life, man, right? It's short. Like you gotta add and subtract all the time, especially now.
You were just talking about that. So again, for people who don't know, that's one of my phrases, by the way. People keep calling me out. I go, for people who don't know, because they obviously never will know. That's why you're on here. But part of Tootsie and I's relationship is on occasion when she is too busy, I'll edit her podcast, the Lighthouse Conversations. And it's become this odd thing between us where she almost as if knows that the episode she's going to ask me to edit will somehow resonate in that very moment with my life. Where, for instance, a couple weeks ago, I did the episode with Lisa Becker. Yeah. And in that moment of my life, I was struggling with my health as usual. And so things she was saying, put, life into perspective. But the one that I just thought of when you were talking about was when you were talking to your cousin, Satya Bayak, and all about the, how did she phrase it? Quarter life. I almost said the quarter life crisis. Yeah. And about one of the things that resonated the most with me was the conversation you guys had about sexuality. Yeah. And how if society were a different way, so many more people wouldn't be discovering who they are at 50, 40, even 30. We would have this fluidity. Right. Of being able to, like you said a minute ago, just constantly shape-shifting and evolving.
Yeah. So I get chills. You probably hear me say that when I am at my podcast. I get, this could be like 4 hours long, I'm sure, because there's so much to dive into. And I think you and I share that, like, I like digging. Like, I like going to like the top level stuff. I call it like the soccer sideline stuff, like the things where like you're talking about, that's like not too deep on the soccer sidelines. I think I alienate half the world on soccer sidelines as a mom because I'm like, ooh, your mom died. Like, let's talk about, do you believe in the afterlife? Rather than, wear face and flowers. But I think that I get chills when something really speaks to me, and I want to,
Mm-hmm.
there's something there. Like there's some kind of energy
Mm-hmm.
that when I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about or thinking about something that is worthy, that I get this sense, that chill sensation. And I just got that then. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's so much. I mean, that whole quarter life conversation is fascinating to me because it's such an obvious thing, right? If we had the ability to, they have that saying that youth is wasted on the young. Like you
Yes.
gain so much wisdom, and then it's like, so that quarter life that she's talking about, that that early time when you want to be like wild and experiment and
Mm-hmm.
find yourself is also,
Mm-hmm.
it's so cumbersome, right? Because you also want to find the stability and find that person. So you're simultaneously trying to grow, but fit into some peg and whole situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we were talking about there too is that I find now that I love being a receptacle, a reservoir for people's lives, so they can talk,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so I wind up having lots of conversations with people who are like,
Mm-hmm.
oops, didn't really realize I was gay and I'm 40 and have 5 kids in the suburbs. Or oops, I've spent 20 years going into this world of life professionally, and I totally have ignored the fact that I just want to do this.
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
pay attention to that quarter life and really listen is so important. But anyway,
Totally.
that's,
Yeah. So
yeah.
if you guys are interested, go check out that episode. I will link it somewhere so you guys can go and find it because it was one of my favorite episodes that
Mm.
I've ever had, like the luck of editing
Yeah.
and experiencing. Okay, so
Yeah.
your name,
Yes.
Tootsie.
Also,
Let's talk about that.
let's talk about it. And it's gonna be a really fast part of this conversation because I wish it were a more interesting answer. I get this
Mhm.
question a lot. Um,
Because so do I. Because whenever I tell people about you,
yeah.
they always say, "Is that her real name?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Let her tell you. Let her tell the story."
Well, I wish it was an answer. I should probably make up a more interesting answer for this. And I think people, like, if somebody says, and then if you talk about me and then you're like, oh, look, there she is. There's
Mhm.
often, and maybe I'm projecting, but there's often like that. She's like, just like, white girl. Like, I want the name Tootsie and like me
Really?
come out with like this big, like red afro. And yeah, but I'm not. Um,
But I feel
so,
like you are. That's your
oh,
energy.
it is a little bit my energy. But in my head, I kind of want,
Okay.
like, I want
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um, which I am in my head. So Tootsie is a nickname kind of from the day I was born.
Okay.
So I wish there were like something more interesting, but I grew up in this really tight knit community
Okay.
of like friends and family, like the kind of place where you go into somebody's house and your parents are like, where have you been for 3 days? And you're like, oh, sorry, I was at Marnie's house next door. So I had this really awesome community. And I think that, first of all, the answer is no one really knows. Let's start there. No one really knows how I got the nickname. But I
Interesting.
think it was like a cute name that you give to somebody, sweetie, cookie, honey, I don't
Mhm,
know,
mhm,
bunny.
mhm, mhm,
And the
mhm.
combination of having a lot of people who, I'm the youngest in my family of 3, and the
Okay.
combination of having a lot of people who were calling me that. And I think I always had a certain kind of personality, and I went into the arts, that there are all these things that just kept on building and setting it into cement. There were several times, it's not my real name. So my real name is Andrea. I kind of say it because like my grandmother, I know, right? My grandmother, who's like one of the only people who had used it, I have like European ancestors.
Mhm.
She would call me like Andrea. So no one
Mm.
really used it.
Mhm.
But I tried to switch my name to like Andy in 6th grade with 2 E's. Or like when I
Okay.
went to college, I was like, it never worked. People would like,
Really?
one person would know me or it would get out. I mean, I didn't try that
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be like a 79-year-old Tootsie one day, just like the other
I love
79-year-old
it.
Tootsies and dogs. It's me, dogs, and older women.
Yeah, yeah. Hey,
So
it's not a
that's how it
bad
goes.
group to be in. So,
Well, and the good thing is, like, it winds up being great. Like, I mean, I have to be a
Mhm.
good human being because, I mean, if I do something terrible, people will remember me too. But it winds up being memorable, and I told you, not a
Yeah.
very interesting story.
Any time in my life since knowing you over the past 7 years, 8 years, which is insane to think about, you're a source of joy for people. And any experience, this is what I wanted to say. Any experience I've ever had with you and the people that are surrounding you has been nothing but light. And that's
Mm.
rare. That's rare because a lot of times I've dealt with this is I'm someone who radiates joy, but
Yeah.
that brings in some darkness sometimes because
Yeah.
people who need that or want to feed on that
Yeah.
try to take that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you can explain to me if whether it's happened or not, but has that come with practice of learning how to surround yourself with good people, or is it just you're lucky and no one wants to fuck with you, you know?
I think this is a great question. And let me just make sure that I don't miss this point. No, I'm not
Mhm,
lucky.
mhm, mhm.
It's funny because I just had this conversation recently with somebody, with one of my students from New York City who is on the app. He's like he basically is somebody who like radiates joy, and he
Okay.
is I forget what he like how what he like titles himself, but he's on the app. Do you mind? Do you know this? It's
No.
an app like a
Mm-mm.
mental wellness, and like there's everything from like money, relationships, sex, joy, whatever. But we
Mhm.
were having a conversation offline, a phone call. Um, I want to like distill anything like my going back to like the reality. I think that there are a couple things. One, I think people will see what they want to see, right? Like I don't, not that I only put out the highs in my, like I don't only advertise the highs. And on the contrary, I think that anyone who does my yoga classes or goes on retreats with me knows that I really enjoy highlighting the difficulty and the challenges of life.
Mhm.
Um, if you ask my family or like my children, like absolutely not am I always on a high. Um, I believe on the contrary, generally speaking, I believe it is important to be honest and real about all of life so that you could grapple and deal with the tough stuff to really enjoy and like marinate in the great stuff.
Yeah.
So little by little, I think that I have been crafting a life that has allowed me to honestly look at and deal with difficulties, mine and other people's.
Mhm.
And so, because I'm like brazen and courageous enough to do that most of the time, I hope, I really relish and enjoy and love all of the awesome stuff. So like I'll dig into the heavy stuff, and then when I'm out like in the front of the dance floor and teaching 60 people 2 nights ago on the rooftop, and it's a gorgeous day and the DJ's pumping, and you're like, holy shit, this is life. It is all real. There's nothing that is not real about it. But
Mhm.
it's not because, and I'm very suspect of anybody who's like, I am always happy. I only find joy in life. I love, I mean, not to say there are amazing people who can do that. That is not
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
I believe that if you're somebody, listen, if you are alone on some mountaintop or in Bhutan where the happiness index is like off the charts, maybe. But when the more full your life is, I have family, I have
Yeah.
friends, I have a career, the more challenges there are, right? I mean, I have to be honest. Parenthood's one of the easiest things to say that with. Like
Mm.
you could wake up, I wake up most days being like, yeah, like grateful. And if a
Mhm.
kid is having a tough moment, and I have great kids, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Or I think I have wonderful kids. I mean, they're kids, but if a kid is having a tough moment, whether it's because they're frustrated because they can't find a fucking sock, or because they're going through their own real things in their 6-year old, 8-year old, 10-year old, 14-year old version,
Yeah.
right? Like it's heartbreaking. It
Absolutely.
will crush and break any good feeling that I have, at least for a moment.
Mhm.
So the more full one's life is, I assert, the more likely you're going to have pain, frustration, heartbreak, all of those tough things
Mhm.
that you just have to look at and deal with.
Yeah.
I had an awesome day the other day. I had a really awesome day. We're coming out of this pandemic moment, knock on wood, my head, and coming out of isolation. And I
Yeah.
had this like huge, I had this really big event, and it was amazing. I felt so high. But in my personal life, there are things going on that it was really important to me to tend to. So
Mhm.
like in any given moment, I will be like everybody else. Like I'm zero different than anybody else who has hopefully the ability to appreciate the richness of the great stuff. And I'm very fortunate to also create my own great stuff. I don't wait for shit to happen. And then also tend and not shy away from the crap, the tough stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One of the things that you like constantly inspire me about is, and the reason why you and I have always just clicked, is I'm the same way. I want something in my life. I build the door, I build the key, and I unlock it and go through. You, during COVID last year, you know, just like anyone else in your industry, went from in-person classes to finding ways to do it virtual, which then you created your own virtual studio. But then you said, okay, but this is annoying to then have to go to somewhere else to record this content. Yeah. Let me build a fucking studio in my basement. Right. And if that ain't the like the manifestation of I want something, I'm gonna literally build it. Yeah. I want to know, when did the dancing begin, and when was it in your life that it clicked that this was going to be your fucking thing? Yeah.
By the way, to that other point, I just want to say this one thing that I think there are some people who are just get shit doners. They're people who just like to get shit done. And I think that those people tend to be like in their blood. Like maybe it's a little type A. And to that whole, like people ask me about the digital studio thing. I didn't realize that it was like a decision that I was making. It was a big decision. I was like, obviously, this is obviously what I need to do. And then the next step is obviously what I need to do. And so I'm not one of these people who was like, do I, don't I? I just kind of, for good or ill, moved to the next step. Same. And I think that's what, and I think that it attracts that same kind of person that you want, because it's hard to have, it's hard. I mean, some people you have in your life and they are who you're in your life, but if you're attracting people, like that's like family or those close friends, you want to be in those conversations that keep building you, right? So you tend to attract people who also are building, because it's very distracting to have people in your life when you're building who are like, I just really like binge watching Netflix all day. Like I do too, but that conversation is not going to help me get where I'm going to need to be. So I can't have those people in my life at certain times in my life. Dancing. I, like many young girls, started dancing. A good part of the story is I started, I think I was like kind of tucked into a dance class when I was like 6 with all the other girls in the neighborhood. And I remember it was a tap jazz combination. And like that was the class. And I was like, don't love it, see ya. And I dropped out at like 6. Yeah. I was a 6-year-old dropout. And so in 2nd grade, one of my friends wound up, but basically I just went back to a studio in like 2nd grade. Okay. And from there on, I never use the word obsessed that much, but I became intensely in love with dance. And at that time, I'm from New Jersey, so I became just one of these studio kids where I pretty much lived there. I don't have kids like this, but there are kids like this that you're introduced to something and your life is better with it. Like you can't imagine not doing it. My parents were never like, time to go to dance. On the contrary, my parents were like, what? Like they were barely engaged. They probably would say something different. My father's no longer alive, but my mom was like getting her 2nd master's degree. Like she's like a mover and a shaker. Okay. Literally and figuratively. I come from like a very academic family. In some ways, I'm very much of a black sheep. So I was dancing I was a dancer, and I loved it. But the truth is, there were many times in my life. So I danced throughout high school, and I was doing the competitions and all of that. And then when I was going to go to college, I remember going to brunch in a West Village restaurant with I don't think my brother was there, my sisters, my sister, my parents.
And what college was this?
So I went to Cornell.
Okay.
I went to Cornell University. But before I went to school, we were talking about where I was going to apply. And I didn't really want to apply to Juilliard because I already knew in my blood that I'm not like a conservatory kind of dancer. I'm a little bit of like a rogue, wild, can't remember choreography, just going to make some shit up kind of dancer. And I've always been like much better in that way, which is why I can't do like 8 shows a week Broadway. Like it just doesn't work for me. But I remember kind of testing the waters and saying that I wanted to play like Juilliard. And my dad, he's first generation immigrant, like Holocaust surviving family, that kind of thing. Like, just came here and made a life and spoke English better than his parents kind of thing. Love, like many immigrants, love security. Yeah. And my father was like, you are not applying to Juilliard. I was like, oh, now that you said no, I'm definitely applying. And basically, he was like, you could apply to great schools like that have great dance programs, but you need to go to the best school you get into. And even though I kind of agreed even at that time, because I've always been a super nerd, I wanted to press buttons. So suffice to say, I went to school, I found a school that had great academics, but also had a great dance program. Once I got into the real world, there were plenty of times that I was like, okay, it's time for me to grow up. It's time for me to stop dancing. It's time for me to just, let me find a corporate job. Let me do this. That's the world I came from. I mean, everyone went into something very buttoned up and corporate. I mean, some people even I will say this, and maybe you didn't edit some of these, but these podcasts, but the dancers at Cornell, what was amazing is that many of them were like pre-med and dance double majors. So they became midwives and also danced for dance companies. Or my friend Deirdre was a rockhead and then became a cardiologist.
That's right.
Yes. Or, plenty of them were became vets and still were, with Elizabeth Streb, which is this crazy dance. So many of those dancers at Cornell were still like me, who were pursuing one, I was psychology. We're something pre-med, engineering, psychology, vet, and also at the dance studio all the time. So when I came out of college, I moved abroad. I decided I had studied abroad and I loved Spain. So I moved to Barcelona. I basically told my parents, who love to travel, that I wanted to not settle down in the States yet. And I was like, I don't know anybody in Barcelona, but I'm going to get on a plane and I'm just going to land. And that's literally what I did. Anyway, there I did some work. I came back. I still was like, okay, time for me to be I came back. I was auditioning. I started choreographing, but I always felt like I had to just kind of sow these wild dance oats and then move on. And I never did.
No. And I'm so happy you didn't.
I just couldn't. So the very, very 20-minute long answer of that is that I started dancing when I was 8. And it so clearly is something that is fundamentally who I am, that even when I tried to get rid of it to grow up or do something else, I can't.
I'm with you. I just talked about this in another interview, and we both agreed that what's the point of life if you don't just keep trying? You can, for instance, let's say you did go down that buttoned up path, but at night you were still dancing, hoping that maybe one day, who cares if it didn't or didn't, at least you did it, and you can die knowing you at least did the life that you wanted to live.
Yeah. Yes. And I think, for me, part of it is that I have always, I've only been able to articulate it later on in my life, but I have always wanted, I am voraciously hungry for every day of life. And if I could simultaneously live 3 different lives right now, that's what I want to do. I would do exactly what I'm doing, but I would also probably have a psychiatry or a psychology practice and do some version of an Oprah-y thing. And travel wildly and have retreats of 50. I would do, and I'm doing a version of all of them, right? But I would do I would dig in deeply to all of that, which again is some form of fashion I'm doing, but it moves too quickly. I just want,
I know.
I'm hungry for it all.
Yeah. I have been making so many new friends now that I live in a new city. And going way back to the beginning of the interview when you talked about how to describe yourself, and when I tell them these new things that I'm doing, running my own editorial business, starting a talk show, this, that, whatever. And they always have a hard time keeping up when I talk about things. But I say, I'll never expect someone to remember or retain all of the intricate pieces that make Sam whole. But because even I sometimes will forget all of the little things that make me, because like you just said, you're hungry to just to live life.
Yeah.
And what's the fucking point if we're only going to live life a little bit? I'm just going to have a little microdose life, tiptoe all the way to death safely. What's the fucking point of living?
Yeah.
I want to get my hands dirty in everything. And any job I've ever worked in, coffee shop, production studio, when I was in college at Wawa, I wanted to learn everything I could about every part of the job.
Totally. Exactly. And I think that's a great way to live. And I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, which is a little bit harder when you have kids and you move to the suburbs.
Especially your suburbs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. It is. That's challenging. I mean, there's a part of me that is like that, but that's a little challenging. And I did the same thing. I worked in production, and I worked. I wanted to learn every aspect. And come this year, that was really beneficial. That I knew a little bit of everything. Because I did.
That's the other thing, Tootsie. That's what I always say to people when people ask, Sam, how have you been able to build your own life and go through the doors you want? And I say, because I didn't just go through life with, I'm going to be this one thing, learn that one thing. I said, because that's not how life is even supposed to be functional.
Yeah, right.
It just doesn't make any sense. But I digress. We'll digress because we could again talk about that forever. So let's go back to some of these questions that I sent you.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the ones that I want to just dive right into, and I'm really hoping that you have an answer to it. So you spent a lot of time in New York City.
Yeah.
As someone who's new, even though I'm in Hoboken, I'm literally in the city 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Do you have any good just New York City stories, something ridiculous that happened in your time there? Or you ran into someone and it became an inspiring thing?
Here's a good one that probably your listeners will think is very interesting. So in the city, I did a lot of things, but I choreograph, right? Especially I choreograph more before I lifted off my whole fitness world. And and we were rehearsing. I was choreographing for a recording artist. And we were rehearsing the backup dancers, and we were using and I would often try to snag free rehearsal space from all the different places that I taught in the city.
Oh, smart. Yeah,
right?
Smart.
So, and I would be like, hey, it's good for you because this reason you're not using the space anyway. So Reebok was really great with that. So I would use the space in the Upper West Side Reebok. So I go to the bathroom, we're rehearsing, I go to the bathroom, and the bathroom was really small. And when I walked in, it was just me and Beyonce. Yeah, so we were
no
this close.
Fucking way.
And Beyonce had a full weave going on, talk about awesome big hair. So we were kind of there's two rooms right next to each other in Reebok, and that was one of the times where I was like, hey bae, where we were both rehearsing. She was rehearsing with, I was not choreographing for Beyonce at the time. I
was like, what are you not telling me?
Yeah. So they were rehearsing in the room next to me. So evidently they wanted free rehearsal space too. That's all I'm going to say.
That is such a cool story, though.
So that's a good story. And then I guess my last story, I have 1,000, but here's my other one that comes to mind, which is not related to either of those and not New York City, but I was in Barcelona and I was teaching young girls how to dance, younger girls. And they were going to be training for auditions. I can't even remember what it was, but I speak Spanish. I learned how to speak Spanish in school and then wanted to get fluent when I was there. And so I was teaching them choreography. And so I would, when you teach, it's and an elbow, pop, pop. And so I was teaching them, this is here. And this I was calling coño. Do you speak Spanish at all? Okay. No. So basically this is a codo. An elbow is a C-O-D-O, but codo.
Okay.
Coño is the C word in Spanish. So I am teaching all of these little girls as I'm basically, it's being and That's my all-time like, and I had no idea. So I'm doing it with like, like with inflection and like I'm yelling it out. Like, how I bark in class. You've taken my class. So I am like screaming. And these girls who are trying to be really respectful to like, I was like 20 at the time, 21. But I am just screaming like cunt to them over and over and over as they're dancing. It's one of my favorite stories.
That is like straight out of a fucking sitcom.
Yeah.
You can't make that up.
I mean, can you imagine like seeing somebody in the front of the room, like screaming at your 8-year-old kid, cunt, over and over again? And like, I'm not a drag queen. Like that wasn't cute then. It wasn't like, it didn't have like, it wasn't like, oh, that's cunty. Like, no, that was not happening now.
Let's change it up a little bit because
Let's get dark.
What was the moment in your life that you look back and was the darkest? And I want to know how you got out of it and what advice you would give to someone if they found themselves back in that same space.
I will say this like straight up that I am I feel like I'm a very grounded, centered person. I'm not speaking here and then we'll turn this off and then like fall into a depression. I just, I think that these days I'm kind of fascinated by this idea of selling pain. I think there's this whole world of like, not in a bad way. I think it's wonderful that we're all connecting on these like deeper, real levels, but it's almost like the more you divulge about yourself and like your inner pain, the more currency you have. And it freaks me out a little bit. It freaks me out a little bit because I feel like, I think it's wonderful for people to share, but I also think that there's nothing wrong with, I will always maintain some privacy, partly because I had my brush with fame and I feel like that's cute. And people get pushed up high and lionized and then taken down in a minute. I mean, this morning I was reading about Ellen DeGeneres and I felt like, I'm so sad for her. Like, of course she's not amazing all the time. I mean, I don't know. I read the headlines, but like everyone, I'm not dying to be at the top for somebody to be like, actually, I think she sucks. And for the whole world to be like, oh yeah, she does suck. And it happens all the time. Like it's cancel culture. It's also hard to watch people get to the top. Anyway, this is all to say that I go through things all the time. I will say one of the hardest times in my life was when my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Wow.
And going through that period of time was incredibly difficult. I've always been somebody who thankfully has had a very vibrant, I've had a really good life.
Yeah.
Partly I believe that like that's through karma, through like other things I've studied. I think that it's because I've probably been through other stuff maybe before that I've deserved this. And I also, my good life is not because like, we have everything we need. It's because I love the life that I'm creating with massive, shit going down. Like it is not a golden path, but like when it's not, I'm like, all right, let's take care of this. Like, let's do something, right? It's hard and complicated, but I love it. So with feeling that gratitude for my entire life. And I've also been, a woman or a girl who's, I was like president of my class and I was like the soloist of my dance company. Like I've always had this like really good fortune, right? Not because I didn't work for it, but like I just did.
Yeah.
I've always been ready for the shoe to drop. I always felt like it's not fair for things to go so well for me, even though I'm working for them. And so my father, and by the way, he was, 68. He wasn't 20, he wasn't 40. Like, he was older, but it was a very difficult time. And it was a long process. And it was really difficult for my family, all the typical things, right? And I was with my dad. He was in hospice care at the end. So he was at home and he was really coherent towards the end. And throughout the whole thing, but like you lived fully. And I was literally holding him when he passed from this life to whatever's next. And
sorry.
That was, if I had to stake if I had to put a flag in the moment that probably changed my life,
Mhm.
it was around then. It was being
Okay.
like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what is life? If I'm holding you and
I'm
talking
getting
to you
chills.
one moment, and then we're calling for your body to be taken away another moment.
Yeah.
So it was in that moment where I was like, all right, let's get to this. Let's like pull the belly up to the bar and get shit done and make life happen. And not to say that I'm not before anything that I do that's worthwhile, including this conversation, including any huge event that I do, including building a digital studio, including planning a retreat. I'm always scared. I'm always nervous. I'm always concerned it's not going to be a success. But I have an awesome husband who is like, he never says shut the fuck up, but in his head he is. And who's supportive. And ultimately I do it in like a form of legacy to still being here and living on as fully as I can in the name of my dad.
Okay. I love that. I love that answer. I mean, again,
That's
I'm
the main
so
answer.
sorry for what happened to you.
You know what? I was so blessed to have him. He's shaped my life amazingly. Again, I had him for most of my life. And that's not to say there hasn't been shit that's gone down my life afterwards. But if I had to speak about one moment that was difficult, that'd be it.
Okay. Okay. So going off of that,
Yeah.
you just talked about your legacy in your life. What would you want to be on your tombstone?
You know,
what
you
what
wrote me
phrase
that.
or saying? Yeah.
We probably don't want to end with this one because
No, we won't.
I-
We won't. We'll,
Yes.
We'll,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
do a joyful one.
No,
We'll do a
not even
joyful
that.
one to end it with.
I've never, even as somebody like, I love talking about death. I love talking about the afterlife. I love
Yes.
talking to
Yeah.
mediums. Like I know we have that kind of in common.
Mhm,
I've
mhm.
never thought about this.
Wow.
And I visit my dad's tombstone, like which is like with some of my other family.
Okay.
I think the reason why I say I don't want to end with it is that it's not that interesting of a question or an answer for me, because
Really?
ultimately I'm a very pragmatic person. I'm wild. I want to build,
Yeah.
like do all these things, but I also am very grounded in the fundamentals of life. Like
Mm.
I will throw my kids in front of everything that I do. You know, like my family will always come first. My
Yeah.
friendships, like all of those things, I'll be this kind of person. But when you get down to it, like my core values are intensely intact in that way. So
Mhm,
to that point, my tombstone will say what probably is in like the generations of my family, which is like my name, the dates. I'm not putting like a quote on there. Like I am a daughter.
Really?
I'm a
I
yeah.
feel like you would.
I don't. Maybe it's different. You know, if God forbid something were to happen to me now, you know, we were talking about doing that for my dad. Like my mom was like, who's a little like zany, was like, we should put this on his tombstone. And I was like, no, we're definitely not doing that. And I think also, I mean, what I theoretically, it would be a version of like live or like stay hungry or get it.
Yes.
Or, you know, one of my retreats, the theme was live to live. But I have to be honest, as much as I believe that, I also think you need to shut up and just listen, which is living, but it's not that same voraciousness, right? It's like what I was talking about before. You know, like there's you getting what you want, Sam. And then there's you like shushing and then being there for your friends and your family, which is a different version of living, but it's like a quieter, more humble way of doing it. And death is a very humbling experience, you know? So hopefully like whatever I am will live through things like this. But I think my tombstone will probably not happen for a while, I hope. And
Oh
be,
no. No.
and it will be, you know, I don't know. And I'm not sure if I really want to think about it because that's so fucking depressing.
Yeah, no. All right, Tootsie, we are at time. Really quick, before I ask you the final question, plug where everyone can find you.
Oh, gosh, I'm terrible at this. Do you know that? I'm really, really bad at this. Like my right-hand woman is like, you are terrible at that. So you could find me at, my name, which is where it began, tootsieolan.com. So it's that, you could find it. That's my main website, which is like, you know, the retreats and the events and the about us and classes. And that was like where everything lived before COVID. And then there's my digital studio for all of my online on-demand classes, so that no matter where you are in the world, which is really exciting, you could do classes anytime, anywhere. And that is, I think, digitalstudio.tootsieolan.com. And then Instagram, my same name, Facebook, my same name. I don't do Twitter because that would drive me fucking crazy.
You would not survive. You just
not a minute. And I love words, which is the irony, but no thanks. I think those are the places. And then in real life, when I'm in different places all over.
Okay, so to leave the audience with a rush of joy and inspiration, what advice can you give someone right now if they're listening to this and they want to pivot their mind and have a joyful rest of their day, and right now they're in a lull? What quick advice could you tell them, a tip, a trick that gets you going?
I mean, I think that the easiest go-to is like music. Like throw on that great song, put it in your ears. I find that to be a major mood shift. I mean, granted, I'm a little biased because as I dance and yoga, I stand by that, like, go outside, get off the electronics, like stop looking at what my biggest thing is, stop looking at what everyone else is doing. The minute the comparison ends, what people are putting out there, give yourself that like detox and just fill yourself up with all of like the best stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's my go-to.
Love it. I love it.
And then also dance.
Oh yeah, and just fucking literally dance like no one is watching.
Right, exactly. I mean, I can't get enough of that, but that might be, not everyone's like, oh, that brings me joy, but it should.
No, it should. Yes, exactly.
Just saying.
Well, Tootsie, thank you so much for coming on the Shmee Show.
I can't wait to do another 4 hours next week with you. I'll see you there, okay?
I know. We could literally talk forever.
This is great. This is such a great fit. I love you in this kind of version.
Thank you.
And you're
Me
so
too.
Like,
I'm digging it.
I mean, the whole thing, like the look of it, you have such a great voice and like their earnestness. So may this only bring great things.
Thank you so much, Tootsie. All right.
Thank you for having me.
See you later.
Adios.